type in things.
Chat
Feature. And then on the Facebooks, which I'll be awkwardly monitoring this time on my phone while I talk to you. Like I said before, I'm Cassie. I have a couple certifications in USA weightlifting, I'm a national level weightlifter and a CrossFit competitor. Rachel here is a professional strongman woman.
Strongman. This woman.
Strong woman. Can you tell us a bit about your competitive career and how awesome, or maybe like how heavy you lift?
Well, it just depends on the event somewhat. I started strongman in 2011, 2012. Just started out with local shows, and then now I'm competing or training for World's Strongest Woman in December. So it's hard to say how much I lift because every event is very different. From strongman, it's like overhead to deadlifting, carrying events to stone loads, so it's all relative. So there's a lot going on in strongman. What I will say about the deadlift in strongman is it varies from a side to front handle pull, car deadlift to axle bar.
Car deadlift, just picking up a car.
There's a lot of variations in strongman. So if you're looking specifically for like powerlifting cues and such, my training is a little different. I typically don't sumo deadlift a lot because we're not able to in strongman in competition. So I use it more as an accessory and focus more on conventional training. So there you have it.
She's a badass. And very strong, trust. OMG, wow. You know it. Ryan Henry, I deadlifted wrong and pulled a muscle in my lower back. What did I do wrong? We will go over that. So first thing I want to talk about with a deadlift is the actual reason that you're deadlifting. So if you're like walking to the gym one day and you're like, hey, I want to deadlift, that's fine. But like, let's say you put 315 on the bar and you don't really know what you're doing, and you pull it up once or twice, you might hurt yourself. The issue that generally happens with deadlifts is people just do it because it's cool. They're not actually sure why it's in their program, or it's not even in their program, they just feel like doing it in a specific day. Your goal as a lifter is to decide, pretty much for your whole program, but for deadlifts in particular for today, is why am I doing these deadlifts? Am I doing it to get stronger? Am I doing it to like build a specific muscle for bodybuilding? Am I doing it because I want to compete? Am I doing it just for funsies? If your answer is, I don't know why I'm doing the deadlift, you probably shouldn't do them. If your answer is, I want to get better at X, then your program needs to reflect your goal. Yeah, good programming essentially. So if you want to get better at the deadlift, you need to program the deadlift into your program a couple times a week. You need to start with your 1 rep max. You got to test your 1 rep max, see where you're at, and then train in that 70 per 80th percentile of that max in your program. Does that make sense? So trying to like just deadlift once a month as heavy as you can is just like asking for an injury. And if you are just starting and you don't quite know how to deadlift, if you don't start with proper form, your ceiling for how much you're going to be able to lift is going to be really, really low, right? Yeah. Good form, high ceiling, bad form, low ceiling, if that makes sense. Yeah. Helpful teaching, thank you. So let's talk about, before we start getting into like the nitty gritty of form and such, let's talk about the gear that you might wear to deadlift. You'll notice that Rachel has no shoes on. I don't know if you can see her feet, they're down there. She just has her socks on. I have these like Keds that are very flat. Rachel has a couple belts. Could you tell us about your belts?
Yeah, so if you're curious why I don't wear shoes when I deadlift, it's because you want to be as stable as possible. If you have squishy shoes, it will throw your stability and your risk of injury increases if your ankles and your feet aren't stable. And you also want to be as close to the floor as you can to shorten that pull. Especially if you're going for heavy lifts, everything will help. So it's very technical. I just feel more comfortable in socks. Not every gym or competition per se will let you go without shoes. So something like what Cassie has on, or just a very minimalist shoe. A lot of people wear wrestling shoes, just anything without any squish. Trucks, great. So the belt, I usually wear this belt because it's really stiff. This is a lever belt, so it obviously attaches this way without prongs and then tightens with the lever. This one is a prong belt. This one doesn't fit me as tightly, so I kind of, depending on how tight I want my belt or what event I'm doing, I may use this belt. So it's all personal preference. Some people wear a soft belt as they're warming up to keep their back warm. So just like you're training the lift, your belt has a purpose. It's not just something you wear the entire time as you're lifting. So you want to use the belt as it's intended to use and learn how to use it properly. So you should be pushing your core into the belt, into the back of the belt and the front of the belt, and only using it when you have to, so that you're strengthening your core throughout your training, but using it when the weight's heavy enough to where you need it, right?
In general, a good rule of thumb for belt wearing is if you're at 80% or above, then throw that sucker on. In general, like Rachel said, if you want to strengthen your core, which really the big lifts, the squat and the deadlift do really, really well. Also the point, you'll see that Rachel's belts are the same size the whole way around, or yeah, whole length. They don't get bigger in the back. That's because really the purpose of a belt is to give your abdominals something to push against. So if you're wearing it like low on your hips thinking it's gonna save your lower back, that's not the purpose. When Rachel puts a belt on, she's gonna put it around her belly button, she's gonna yank that sucker tight, so her abs can have something to push against, so she can pull and keep her core really, really solid. Yeah, see that? It's like when you let your belt out, it should like feel good.
Yeah, it's not something you should be able to wear through your entire session and not loosen or take it off. As soon as I'm done lifting, I undo the lever or take the prong belt off.
Okay. Let's see.
Do you want to have a question from YouTube?
Oh, YouTube.
Chloe asks, how many times per week should I deadlift if my goal is to get stronger?
Chloe, how many days a week should you deadlift if your goal is to get stronger? I guess it depends on like what lifts you want to get stronger in. If you want to like get stronger in your power lifts, like your deadlift, your squat, and your bench, I mean, I would say program around those lifts that you're doing them, you think, twice a week?
Well, a lot of it is going to depend on each person and your recovery. If you're not recovering, then I wouldn't deadlift multiple times per week just because your program says to. With any style of training, especially if you're strength training, you have to base it off of your recovery and how your body's feeling. And if you feel like you're going to hit an injury because you're not ready, your body's not recovered, then you have to kind of base your training off of that. And also, you're not always training heavy, so your lifts should vary from higher volume with lower weight to heavier weight and less volume. So earlier in the week, you may train the deadlift heavier, and then later, or so many days later, you might train the deadlift with lighter weight, warming up for your squat or something. So it really depends.
Another question from YouTube. What about grip? How do you improve grip strength? Do you suggest straps, or do you go heavy with the bar? Or
right.
How do you go with the bar slipping from your hand?
That's a great question.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think straps are overused a lot of times. A lot of times people will just immediately use straps from the beginning as they're training and overuse it not only with the deadlift but with other lifts in the gym, because you're using your grip all the time when you're training. So if you're using straps doing dumbbell rows, like obviously your point with the dumbbell row is to work your back. So you may use straps when it's heavier, but don't rely on them all the time. And especially when you're deadlifting, only use them if you're trying to get to a heavier weight and you have to use them as you're warming up and doing your working sets. And some days don't use them at all, but definitely don't depend on them. I also use a reverse grip, and we can go over this as well.
Over the grips.
So, but definitely people use straps too often. Since we're talking about straps, there's a lot of different variations of straps, especially now. Since I compete in strongman, I feel like I have 10 pairs of everything. So there's stuff from figure 8 straps where you can just easily loop into the strap this way and grab the bar. There's longer straps if you ever use an axle bar or something that will require a longer strap. This is a more traditional style strap that you can use. You're probably more familiar with this way. There's also Versa grips, which they're fast and easy and still allow you to grip the bar more so than just your bare hand. So this one doesn't actually strap around the bar, it just helps you grip this way. Awesome.
I would say don't strap up unless your grip becomes your limiting factor. And again, like the purpose of your lifting should help you make decisions about what equipment you're using. If you're lifting for like general health and like survival during a zombie apocalypse, like don't use straps. If you're dangling from a cliff face again and you have to pull yourself up, you're not gonna have straps. You're gonna have your bare ass hands that you're gonna have to pull yourself up with.
Yeah.
So like in general, like just badassness, like your hands, like they need to be grippy and strong. And there's lots of really cool, you can go on BB.com and look for ways to strengthen your grip. There's lots of awesome farmer's carries are great. Even deadlifting heavy without straps is gonna improve your grip strength. Pull-ups, just hanging really from the bar for as long as you can. Do exercises to help improve your grip strength. Do not ever rely on equipment to do it for you.
So I got a lot of questions about using a belt and when they should know what amount of weight should they put the belt on?
Okay, again, belts, put your belt on if you're lifting 80% and above is my general advice. Make sure it's tight enough. You don't need to wear it the whole time. It should be like, and then when you let it go, it should be like, oh, thank God it's off. What do you recommend for a belt? What brands? Lots on BB.com. Again, try to get ones that are the same size all the way through.
Yeah.
Wear it above your belly button. Don't wear it on your hips.
I will say a lot of women complain about a wider belt like this digging into their ribs, especially if you have a short torso. They insert, and there's probably other belts that make them so they taper at the waist, so it kind of pulls in and fits more so into your ribs. I've never used that style of belt, but Insert does make one, so that's a common question I get from women that have issues with their ribs digging into the belt. But I will say, you kind of just have to get used to it, and when you get the belt, they're usually stiff. This SBD belt is very stiff, and I've had it for almost a year, and it's still very stiff. And so it's something that's not made necessarily for comfort. It's to support your back and your core. And like we said before, don't overtrain with it. You kind of have to use your judgment. If you're starting to feel weak through your pulls and like you're not able to hit the reps that you want or the weight, then add the belt. But again, try to back off from using it as you get stronger with those weights.
Can you go over the name of those belts one more time?
Yep, this is the SBD belt. And this is just a personal belt that I like to use. Everyone is very different. There's a number of different belts, and you want to, if you're training for powerlifting specifically, you want to make sure that your gear is approved by the federation that you're competing through. So if you're
most of you aren't going to be.
Yeah, I know this is a beginner's guide, but I just want to throw that out there before you spend a bunch of money on a belt, because they are expensive, and I've had this one since 2013. So it will last you a long time. So I suggest if you're working out in a gym and you can try someone's belt to get a feel for what it's like, whether it's a lever belt or a prong belt, before you invest a bunch of money into a belt, get an idea of what you're gonna need and what your goal is for why you're training.
Okay, mechanics. I know you guys want us to move on. Sorry, chatting a lot about belts. Okay, so for beginners, generally, this is what I suggest. You put your laces under the bar, you get your shins to the bar, just bend it, well, no, put your laces under. So where Rachel's laces would be.
Oh, this way, that's way.
So, yeah. So Rachel's gonna put her feet where her laces would be, and then she's gonna bend her knees so her shins touch the bar, and then she's gonna hold the bar. And that's your setup. In general, you want your hips to be below your shoulders. Sorry, did you see that? Hips below your shoulders. You can see that on the side. Oh yeah, would it be better if we turn the bar?
Maybe a little bit.
Let's do, yeah, let me see.
Yeah,
Does that work better? Okay.
Yep.
That's not always the case if you're a like 6'11" bro and you're long AF. Like getting your hips below your shoulders might be really hard. Deadlifting in general might be really hard. But that's generally what you want. But the other, if you would do that again, sure, please.
I usually approach the bar and then get a feel for how far I should be with where my shins touch.
Yep.
Because you don't want the bar floating away from you, so you want to keep it tight, as Cassie will explain, as you pull. So I want to start out with my knees bent. If I approach the bar with my shins against it here, then I'm trapped and I don't have enough room, so I push the bar out with my shins, yep, and then grab the bar.
Yep. You'll also notice that Rachel's hips are not below her knees. The deadlift is a deadlift, it's not a squat. So you, of course, are using your hamstrings and your butt to help you move the bar, but you're not squatting the bar up, if that makes sense. Next thing, Rachel, we're going to talk about is where to put your hands. Rachel likes to use a mixed grip, right? Is that what you use?
Once it's heavier.
Once it's heavier. I use a hook grip. Because most of the deadlifting I do is like a snatch grip or a clean deadlift to help my weightlifting. And then for CrossFit, we do a lot of, I know CrossFit, we do a lot of high rep deadlifts. And like I said, if grip is generally my limiting factor, if I use a hook grip, it helps. But her hands are going to be, because Rachel's a smaller individual, her hands can be a little bit closer to her body. Depending on how wide you are, how wide your legs need to be, your arms are going to come out. I like to measure, I go with my thumbs at the end of the knurling, but that's comfort level for me.
And that's too wide for me.
That's too wide for Rach, yeah. So, other thing to remember, that this is generally, I think, how injuries happen, is when people lift, their butt comes flying up first before their hips. I'm sorry, their butt and their hips come flying up before their chest and their shoulders. That's called a stripper pull. Don't do that. That's generally why I think a lot of injuries happen, is that as soon as your hips come up, you lose all your tension and you're relying completely on your lower back to do the lifts, which is no bueno. How far should your feet be from each other? That's a good question. That's, again, I would say hip width.
It's really going to depend on the comfort of where you're at in the pull. If you have really wide hips and long legs, your stance is not going to be the same as mine. I'm 4'11", and if I like to angle my toes out to give more room in my hips, someone that's taller with longer arms, they're probably going to have a much different stance than I am. So it all comes down to comfort. If you get to the bar and you feel really uncomfortable, then you need to try to do something different. Try to push your toes out, try to angle your knees out a little more, maybe widen your stance, widen your grip. It's all about comfort, because if you start the pull already in an uncomfortable position, then it's, you're not going to be able to hit the weight that you want. So it's all about learning what works for you, because every person is different. Usually people with longer arms, typically deadlift works better for them. I'm built for pressing, not for deadlifting. So this is not my best or favorite event. And I've had to learn the hard way through injuring my back. So definitely take the time to get coaching and learn the right way and watch stuff like this. Because a cue you hear from us versus someone else may trigger something in your brain that makes sense for you, that may be something that can tweak your technique to give you a better deadlift. Okay.
Another thing that will help you keep from shooting your hips up is to make sure the bar stays close to your body. A lot of us, for some reason, if the bar comes outside of or away from our body, that F's up the where your body is, where the weight is, to your center of mass. If you can keep the weight closer to your body, your center of mass, it's going to be much easier for you to pull the weight up. If it's away from you, it's much more likely that you're going to have to go hips first, then come up. So keep the bar close. Let's do a couple reps here. Sorry. Good. Okay, you'll notice that Rachel, before she pulls, she's gonna tighten her. I know you can't see this, but before you pull the bar off the ground, particularly in any lift, in a snatch, in a clean jerk, in a deadlift, you have to be tight. If you have any slack in the bar, in your body, you're just asking your spine to not do what it should do, aka break. Rachel also pulls quickly. You notice you're ripping the bar off the ground. It's not a slow, unless it's heavy, really heavy, it's going to be slow. But you're working, this is a power lift, which means you're moving quickly and you're moving with purpose. And she's going to, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're okay. I mean, even when you're training light, I mean, some people work speed deadlifts into their programming, because if you initiate your pull slow, that's going to take all the tightness out of your back. Like she said, it's a power lift, so your power is coming from the beginning of the lift and from firing your hips and your hamstrings. So if you start the pull scared and slow, then you're going to compromise your back because of that. And I really think of the deadlift as more of a push than a pull, because you're pushing through the floor. You're pushing the weight through your your feet, pushing through your heels, and then you take the slack out of the bar when you initiate the pull. But I'm firing my hamstrings. Yep. And once I pass my knees, it's coming into my hips and locking out my back.
Yeah, that's an important point that Rachel pointed out. A point that she pointed out, and a lot of you are talking about in the comments here. It is you want to push through your feet into the floor. And that takes out, like Rachel said, all the slack out of the bar. That's going to give your hamstrings and your glutes something to do. So that's really important.
It's a lot to think about, but it's also a simple lift because you're literally lifting the bar off the floor, but you want to remember to keep, like she said, don't let your butt come up fast. Keep the bar tight to your shins. And when I initiate the pull, I'm going to lock out my lats and keep my traps tight and pull the slack out of the bar. So I'm already pulling the tension on the bar before I break the floor.
Yep. Nice. And we see how her, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Okay. So a question from YouTube. Bilal asks, how does he keep his back straight? As soon as he starts to pick the bar up, his back starts to bend.
Okay, so that's a good question. That's going to be, so another thing to think about when you're deadlifting is keeping your lats activated. And a lot of us, so this is where I think bodybuilding can be really helpful for people, is you're learning how to move, you're learning what muscles do what. And your lats, like, they run all the way down here. They're a long muscle, and you want to try to keep your sort of, shoulders and your armpits is how to think about turning them on. And that's a really basic sort of helpful way to keep your back straight and engaged as you're deadlifting, is turn on your lats, pull the bar into your body so you're nice and tight, and then stand up.
And think about keeping your chest up. Your logo, think about whatever it is that'll help you keep your chest up, and I keep my neck neutral. A lot of times you'll see people like this, and when the weight gets heavier, your body's gonna react to like a PR, but if you're not, you really wanna try to keep your back neutral and keep your back straight. It really comes from engaging your lats and firing your hamstring, keeping your butt low, and sitting back into the bar, pushing your feet through the floor and pulling, and then firing your hips through without rounding from the start.
Yep. This is a question, CJ Lee on Facebook. Sometimes I see people shoot their hips out once they reach the top. Is that really necessary? I also see people at the same token shoot their shoulders backwards. Is this really necessary?
Like over-exaggerated?
Over-exaggerated. No, it's not necessary.
What he's talking about is when people will pick up the weight and then they're bending back. Definitely, there is no reason to do that. I don't know why people started doing that, but it's just over-straigning your spine really and going into extension, and it's not necessary.
Yeah. I don't know why that's coming from. I guess maybe if you're sticky point, so in deadlifts, everybody has like a sticky point. There's a part where the bar feels heavier. For me, it's like literally trying to get the bar off the ground. That's the worst part for me. Some people get stuck here. And I think if people end up getting stuck here, like their hamstrings are a little weaker, to force it up, well, they just...
And that goes back to, I don't know if anyone watched the Facebook Live yesterday with Casey, but when he was talking about benching and learning where your weakness comes in the bench, if you're starting to fail at the top of the lift, then you should work that part of the lift. Deadlifting and squatting are the same way. If you're failing from the floor, then maybe throw in some deficit lifts. If you're having a hard time locking out your deadlift, then train rack pulls. Like there's a number of different variations of the deadlift that you should train to work different parts of the lift. I wouldn't suggest pulling off the floor the same way every time you deadlift. Train it in different ways, like I said, from the rack, pull off blocks, deficit deadlifts, do higher volume with straight leg deadlifts. So there's different ways because there's a weakness somewhere, so you have to train different parts of the lift to work each aspect of the lift.
Yeah, good call. There's a whole conversation about how we look, and this one guy says we don't look good. It's hilarious. But everyone's telling him to shut up. Sorry. Facebook, you're awesome. Mark, you're weird. Okay, a Libra. I want to have those muscles. I just don't know how to get started. Rachel looks the way she does from years of training, of good nutrition, of dedication. You will get there, it just takes a long time.
Yeah, and being consistent. A lot of times everyone gets excited in January, they hit a 12-week program and they train for 12 weeks, and then you fall off the rest of the year. Building muscle doesn't come from a 6-week, 12-week program. It comes from being consistent year round, year after year. So find something to train for, I suggest, that will motivate you to be consistent in the gym to help you set goals, short-term and long-term goals to keep you consistent in the gym and change things up so you're not bored.
Yep. Another good question about, I'm sorry, I don't know who asked it. Oh, Jason Wong. What if the diameter of your weights don't give you the bar clearance from the ground? That's a super good question. So a lot of the times in like Globo gyms, your 25-pound weight looks like this. And if they don't have bumper plates, like we have here, that makes deadlifting really difficult because it's a lot lower than it needs to be. So I would suggest something you can do is stack 45s, so the bar comes off the ground a little bit. I mean, there's really not much you can do. You can work on accessory lifts like RDLs, you can do good mornings that'll sort of, if you're not necessarily training for trying to get your deadlift better, but maybe like strengthening your glutes and your lower back, and if you don't have the proper equipment to do a good deadlift, you can still do that using accessory lifts.
Well, you can get really creative. Like if your gym doesn't offer something, ask if you can bring in blocks. A lot of times people train out of the garage, and you get really creative with equipment that you have. So you can stack blocks, you can stack weights, anything to mimic the pull. You can set the rack up or the bar up into a rack to get it raised off the ground a little more. So you just kind of have to be creative with what you have.
Shaw from YouTube says, he falls backwards when he deadlifts. Is that a flexibility issue?
That's interesting.
Yeah. It's hard to know without seeing, which again, it's hard to coach anyone with deadlifting without seeing the individual perform the lift. So there's so many variables in the lift. Maybe overextending, maybe putting too much weight into your heels and pulling yourself back. I would just break down the lift and lower the weight so you can really focus on each aspect of the lift to find out where you're failing the lift and falling back.
Yeah, that's the thing about the power lifts. Like, you have to you gotta check your ego when you come in. Again, like, poor technique, low ceiling. You might feel like a wuss or whatever, or pussy when you come in the gym and you only have like 135 on the bar. But if you're doing a lift properly, that weight's gonna come. So like Rachel said, take weight off and play with it. Where are you starting to lose balance? And if your shoes maybe might be a little high in the heel, so you're like weights forward when you're pulling and then it's coming back. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Other good question. How should you position your head when lifting? Look up, neutral head. So what Rachel is doing here is she's actually looking maybe like 5 feet forward. Yeah. Some deadlifters even have their heads even lower and look straight down. That's going to depend on your body. If you look down, some people have more of an issue maybe coming chest up first or butt first. Practice what you're doing with your head. Just play with it. But I would suggest
try not to go into overextension. It puts a lot of strain on your neck. If you are getting into heavier pulls and you feel like, when I'm doing heavier lifts, I lift with a mouthpiece. I have a mouth guard and it helps take some of the tension out of my neck. So if you do have neck injuries, like definitely talk to someone before you start deadlifting. If you have significant injuries with your neck or anything, it's not a good way to start if you're already injured. So
I open my mouth.
Yeah, everyone's a little different, and a lot of times when the weight gets heavier, you're going to naturally lift your head up, but really try to keep your neck neutral.
Yeah. Question
from YouTube. How strict does your diet have to be to see good results?
How strict is your diet? Your diet doesn't have to be that strict. Your diet has to be consistent. So like, go on. If you're starting from the very beginning for your nutrition, go on BB.com, calculate your total daily energy expenditure, find out how many calories that you're expending throughout the day. If you want to lose weight, lower that by, 10 or 20%. Figure out your macros, whatever you want to eat. I mean, for general bodybuilding advice, they always say 40-40-20, 40% of your calories coming from protein, 40% coming from carbs, and 20 coming from fat. You don't have to eat that way. If you like to eat more fat, just play with your carbs and fat. You don't have to have 40% of your calories coming from protein. That's general good advice for maintaining muscle and losing weight. It doesn't have to be that way. You can still eat your Ben & Jerry's. You can still have your drinks at night as long as you are consistently eating fewer calories than yours.
Well, and it all depends on what your goal is. I'm underweight for what I'm training for, so I'm not in a calorie deficit. I never want to be hungry per se. So my goal is much different than a female that's trying to make or cut weight for a contest. So it's all what is what are you training for, and what does that look like for you? And I would suggest whatever is going to keep you the most consistent. If you go too extreme, then after a couple weeks you burn out, and then that's it. So whatever is going to keep you motivated to be consistent, and then make small changes as you go. If you start out just eating, make a goal to eat 5 or 6 times a day, and then make the next week your goal is to change up those meals to set more towards a macro number or something. But make small changes so that it's not so much at once that you're just overwhelmed from the beginning.
Yeah. Another good question, more on Facebook. What's an effective number of reps and sets for deadlifts? I see squat low reps but increase weight. So I think that the question is, like, do you do 5 by 5 or you do 3 by 10?
Well, it's difficult because the deadlift isn't made for a bunch of reps. That's not what the deadlift is really designed to do. Eventually your body's going to break down, and that's where you get hurt. Yep. So if you're trying to hit a ton of reps, you really need to pay attention to your form. I would say stop your reps as soon as you feel your form break. If you're able, if you want to do higher volume training and you're able to hit 8 to 10 reps with the deadlift with keeping decent form, then do that. It'll be good to overload with that much volume. Once your form breaks though, either break down the weight or cut back on the volume. So there's not a set number, just want to change it up so that you're training for strength with reps like higher weight with reps around 3 to 5, and then volume but keeping your form.
Yeah. Question.
You guys got a shout out on Twitch for being aesthetic AF.
Thanks, Twitch. Yeah, flex for that. Okay, how to make the deadlift more of a functional movement, like if I want to focus on getting fit or playing ball or anything else. The deadlift is inherently a functional movement. I mean, we do this all day, every day. This is a thing that we have to be able to bend down and pick things up. I'm not sure what the question is, like, is it more functional? I don't know what that means, other than like maybe throw on some accessory lifts if you don't want to do the deadlift.
Yeah.
If you want to strengthen your glutes and your lower back and your hamstring, there are plenty of accessory lifts you can do for that. You can do squats, you can do RDLs, you can do good mornings, you can do GHDs, plenty of other things you can do besides the deadlift, if that was your question. Dan, can you comment on training periodization? How long would you wave and then deload? That's a great question. I would honestly, yeah,
there's so many things.
Depends on your goal.
If you're starting to feel like your body is breaking down, like I may have a program for 8 weeks before I train in Worlds, and if in 4 weeks I start to hit a wall and I know I'm just breaking down and not recovering enough, then I know I need to throw in a deload. And it's usually like, as you train, you'll get more familiar with your body. I know after 4 to 5 weeks, then I need to deload, and it's all going to vary on your nutrition, if you're not sleeping enough, your stress levels, but as soon as you feel like you're not recovering and you're risking more injury than you are progress, then throw in a deload. And the more consistent you get with your training, then you're gonna know more about your body and when that's most appropriate for you. But I would start with a general program and base it off of that, and then tweak it as your body is tolerant.
You could try PH3. It's a Lane Norton trainer on BB.com. It's a pretty good trainer. You could also, there are plenty of strength coaches out there that you'd have to pay for their program or whatever. But if you're serious about power lifts, I would find a coach and go through a true program. Let's see. Thoughts about lifting with a mixed grip? Yep. Rachel uses a mixed grip.
Yeah, so again, when we were talking about grip, I typically deadlift with wrist straps on. This isn't typical probably in like a bodybuilding style gym to see this, but if you see my grip naturally is pulling in with the strap just being on my hand, it naturally pulls your hand in with the tightness around your wrist. If you're uncomfortable, then it's obviously not necessary, but I use this and I use a double overhand until the weight's heavier, and then I'll switch this hand this way. And you kind of want to get used to using both hands so that you're not, just to keep your body even on each side. So I'll do an over-under grip. My form and setup is the same. But switching one hand out under when the weight gets heavier will help you grip the bar.
Where should you be feeling a deadlift? What muscle are you working on? The deadlift is not a bodybuilding movement. The deadlift is a deadlift. It's a lift for a sport, and it's your whole body. In general, you can say your hamstrings and your glutes. Those are what you should feel after you get done deadlifting. Most people do them just slightly incorrectly or do them a little too heavy where they're going to feel it in their lower back the next day. That's generally okay. A little soreness is probably fine.
Especially a conventional deadlift, you're going to feel a lot of it more in your low back and in your traps too if you're not used to deadlifting, because your whole back should be tight. If you're a sumo deadlifter, then you may feel it more in your hips because more of the weight is being pulled through your hips.
We're going to get to the sumo.
So we had a question about more like what day they should do deadlifts on, whether it's leg day or back day.
Yep, we actually were just talking about this yesterday. It depends again on your programming. I program for strongman, so I'm doing events on a separate day. So I usually have an upper body day, a lower body day, and an accessory day. If you're training more of bodybuilder style, goes back to if you're pulling sumo or conventional maybe, and the purpose of your pull. If you're pulling, if I were conventional deadlifting, I would pull with back day, but I would not pull and squat back-to-back days or anywhere close. You want to separate your power lifts to where your body is able to recover enough.
Which is why, in general, I think in bodybuilding, deadlifts go on back day, squats go on leg day. And there's at least 2 days between the two.
And sometimes if that's not enough time for your body to recover, if you're trying to train deadlift every week, you may find that that's too frequent and your body's not able to recover from squatting and deadlifting every week. So you might alternate squatting 1 week and deadlifting the next, and then front squatting the week after that. So your programming can, again, change to how your body needs to recover.
So to kind of tag on to that, what is the specific rest time you should do for deadlifts?
In between sets. If you're pulling heavy, I would wait 3 to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
If you're training more volume and you want to, keep your heart rate up higher, or you're supersetting, I wouldn't superset with deadlifts anyways, but if you're doing more programming like that, then your rest time would be lower. But if you're training heavier for strength, then your rest should be shorter, or longer, I'm sorry.
How do you breathe when you're deadlifting? It's a great question. And same with the squat, really. Rachel's gonna set up, and before she pulls, she's gonna get really tight and push her belly. Pooping really is kind of how
I try not to let out my air until I'm all the way back down, because if you let your air out as you're coming up, you're losing tightness in your core, and if you're here, you can let it out at the top, but just try not, especially when you're squatting or pulling, you don't want to release your air until you're at the top of the leg.
Valsalva maneuver makes it so your core stays tight, and if you're pulling heavy and anywhere where the bar, you can hurt your back no matter where the bar is, the top of the lift or the bottom of the lift. If you let that out, generally your back's gonna round, and that's gonna hurt no matter where the bar is in the lift. So stay tight, like Rachel said. That's what I suggest too. You shouldn't be holding your breath the whole time anyway. You should only be doing 3 reps. If you want to do it properly, you're going to pull the weight, you're going to set it back down, breathe, get tight, pull.
With a deadlift, with it being so technical, you want to reset every time you're about to pull, even if you're pulling multiple reps. Make sure your body's in the right position. If you set the bar down and the bar floats away from your legs, don't get in a hurry to re-pull. Reset, and if it takes you a little longer to reset to pull the next rep, that's okay, but don't get in a hurry to bust out every rep fast,
right? Because
you're just gonna hurt your back.
Right. Let's talk about the sumo deadlifts. Rachel and our respective sports don't sumo deadlifts.
In strongman, in contest, you cannot sumo deadlift.
Yeah.
So
same with CrossFit.
Powerlifting obviously is different, but it is a good accessory lift. Or if you are a powerlifter, or overall you just like to sumo hold better, because everyone's bodies are different. If you have stronger hips and this is a better position for you, it's definitely still a good lift to do.
I see women use the sumo a lot, and I assume it's because women sort of have wider hips. This is a really hard position on your adductors, which are right here, because you have to essentially keep your knees out wide enough that they're not going to collapse in, that you're going to be able to turn on your glutes from this position, and that you're essentially that pressing motion. You have to. The sumo is difficult in that you have to sort of press and pull at the exact same time. It's a much faster movement than a normal deadlift.
Yeah, you don't really have time to fight through the pull like you do a conventional pull. Like you either get it or you don't. It's really quick.
Yep. And it's in this position, to me, it's much easier for the bar to float away from your body. I know the question is going to be, which one should I do, conventional or sumo? Honestly, I would practice both and see what feels better. Derek behind the camera has done both. What do you think? What's been your...
I like conventional a little better now.
Yeah.
Sumo just because Hurts my hips.
Sumo hurts, yeah.
It's awkward, but
Yeah.
some people, there are some women that are insanely strong powerlifters and they sumo deadlift.
Yeah.
So there isn't anything wrong with either lift. It's really about how your body's built. If you don't have the mobility to get into this position, it maybe is something that you should work on and work on your hip mobility and use it as an accessory and focus your heavier lift on the conventional pull.
But like with most things, you got to practice it too.
Yeah,
So
if
it's
you
like-
never do it, then you're never going to get better at it, obviously. But again, it's all about the goal of your training.
A lot. If you have shorter legs, like sumo is probably going to be much better for you. If you're longer,
And short arms.
and short arms, yeah. If you there's this awesome video with Mark Bell and Ed Cohen about sumo deadlifting, and I would watch that if you're interested in that. But Ed Cohen is built like a gorilla. He has really long arms and short legs, and like he's just made to do this, and he's quite mobile. So yeah, your hips and your knees need to be sort of like prepared to get down, and try to, I know it's hard to do, but kind of relax into this position. And then you want to push and pull at the same time. Get your hips through quickly. Yeah, it was slow.
Yeah, so I was just kind of
playing with it.
demonstrating.
And again, with your head, look out. This, don't look up, particularly in this one's gonna be yucky. Nice. Your hand placement on this is gonna depend on where your legs are. A much closer grip than a conventional deadlift. And yeah, it's gonna depend. Some people are gonna be wider with their legs, which means their hands are gonna be able to be a little bit wider. Rachel doesn't need to be that wide. You'll see some people come, if you wanna just widen your legs a little bit more just for, yeah, you're gonna start to see some people out here. Some people need to do this wide in order to get their hips that low. If you're a tall person, that might be your case. Some people have their feet like all the way out even to the weight. So again, with sumo, you're gonna have to play with it. It's a quick movement. Think about getting your hips through as quickly as possible. Yeah.
It can be a little harder to find the center of the bar as well, because you know you're approaching the bar differently.
Yeah.
So just make sure you're not over to one side and staying as center as you can.
You're gonna tell if you're not quite even, the bar is gonna come up unevenly. That's fine, you're practicing. I mean, make sure you get your hands in the right position, pull the weight up properly, and then add weight as it goes. Does conventional and sumo work the same back muscles?
Conventional just works more of your erectors. You're still using a full body movement. It's just more so with the sumo, you're using more of your hips and your hamstrings.
Yes.
With a conventional pull, you're relying more on your erectors and your traps, I would say. So you're still using your whole body. You're still using the same muscles. You're just using different muscles more in the other lift.
And if your back is one of your weaker muscles, I would go sumo. Because you really, I mean, you're playing to your strength. If you're going for big lifts, if you want to get better at it, you have a much stronger butt and hamstrings than you do back, try sumo. Okay. Now we're going to do the hex bar here. Okay. A hex bar is actually a really good tool if you are a very raw beginner. If you are in high school, if you haven't really ever deadlifted before at all, if you're not sure how your body position is supposed to feel in a deadlift, this piece of equipment is excellent. And I've seen some people put up some actually legit numbers in a hex bar. Did you put a 45? No, it's just 45. Okay. Sorry, any other questions? Okay.
I have two questions on neck position. So you guys talked about it earlier, once you go over it again
for neck position on a deadlift. So really a good thing to think about in a deadlift is to try to keep your spine as neutral as possible the entire time. And your head doesn't necessarily have to be down like this, but if it's up in this position, that's putting your spine in an awkward position, especially if you're pulling, if you have weight in your hands. You can look down. I know a lot of lifters look down. My general advice is to look like 4 or 5 feet ahead of you and stay right there. In any lift, really, in a squat or deadlift, That's going to help you if you look forward a little bit, try to keep your chest up. Some people, if you look down, that makes them keep their chest down a little bit more and their hips shoot up. It's just going to be play with your head position, play with your neck position, just think neutral more than anything. Question. Do you think, Willow Aaron on Facebook asked, do you think deadlifting creates a blocky, thick waist? No. I mean, no.
It helps build a strong core, but not blocky per se.
Yeah, I'm not sure like that's going to make your obliques thicker deadlifting.
And if you feel like that is, then
don't do it.
You can add in other lifts and accessories to help keep a taper in your waist if that's what you're looking for. Yeah.
So the waist taper is actually your lats and your shoulders being bigger than your waist. That has nothing to do with your waist being smaller. It's you're creating the illusion that your waist is small because your shoulders and your shoulders are bigger. If that makes sense. That's what matters. So if you're concerned about the blockiness of your waist, work on your shoulders and work on your back, and that's going to get that V taper. A belt necessary. We talked about the belt a lot, so if you have belt questions, go to the beginning of the video and watch that. I'll answer those questions. What are some good accessory lifts? Talked about those. Hex bar is a great accessory lift to the deadlift. Good mornings, RDLs, GHDs.
Well, think about your hamstrings and your back. So isolating those muscles in your training. So either after you deadlift, you might do pull downs to work on your lats to get your lats stronger. I do face pulls to strengthen my rear delts. And then, like she was saying, focusing on your hamstrings with RDLs and glute ham raises, different variations of the deadlift, and just adding more volume to those lifts. Yeah.
My chat's been wondering, how long have you guys been lifting? Like years-wise?
How long have we been lifting years-wise?
I started in 2008, and I started bodybuilding then, and then I started strongman in 2011. So since 2008.
I started legit, so I played college soccer, so I sort of lifted then. I didn't get serious about lifting until I started working at BB.com in 2011. End of 2011, so we'll say 2012 really. And I started CrossFit in 2014. So not too long. Okay. Okay, so we'll do hex bar. So the thing about the hex bar is it's a weird contraption in that it can get off balance if your hands, your feet, and your hips are not perfectly centered. So the best thing to think about is try to get the center of your foot lined up with this bar here, so it's all in a straight line. Same with your hands, should be right in the center. If they're too far forward, right here, the thing's gonna fall back. If they're too far back, it's gonna fall forward. Yeah, it's weird. This is actually a much easier position to get into because it's really just, you're straight. You don't have to worry where the weight is being in front of you. It's much easier for you to pull because the weight is at the center of your mass.
And sometimes a side handle pull will be a better position for your back in general. If you have weaknesses or any issues in your back, the side handle may make it just a better pull for you in general to start working into a deadlift. And like she said, the bar isn't moving around away from your body as much, so it's easier to control the weight.
Okay, yes. So she's gonna just have her feet about hip width apart, and then she's gonna stand up and go. Again, I would recommend using the hex bar if you're brand new to deadlifting and you need to just understand what your lower body does, pressing into the floor. That's a really important part of this.
And it's some of the same cues. You still don't want your butt to fire up too fast. You're still working your grip. Try not to use straps on this as well. The reason I use this is sometimes in strongman I have a side handle pull, and so I need to change up the variation of pull. It's not just to use a different bar. So think about again what the purpose is of your lift. And you can play with your foot position. It may feel better for you to have your feet wide or a little more narrow, but you just want to think about still your butt is going to stay low, and still think about pressing through the floor and keeping your back tight and locked out. Again, your neck is going to stay in neutral, and keep your lats tight.
So a lot of times if we get a little too wide in this, the awkward part about this is if we get too wide with our feet, then you can't reach down because the handles kind of get in the way. So you have to play with that. a little bit, so Rage can't get too wide. Just be right there. Nice. There's something else I was gonna.
This will always also work if you just want to do conditioning and carry the weight.
Yeah.
If you don't have farmer weights or farmer carries and you don't want to use dumbbells, you can carry this to work on conditioning as well. Yeah.
Questions here.
So I have one.
Oh, okay.
Questions about should they drop the weight or should they do a slow, controlled, eccentric?
It's always better to control the weight. If you're ever training or in the future you decide to do a powerlifting meet, if you drop the weight from the top, you will be given red lights and no lift. So it's not a good habit to get into when you're dropping the weight. However, if for some reason lowering the weight controlled is hurting you, then either lower the weight or figure out why it's hurting you, but don't go so slow that you're almost risking injury. So it should be controlled and not a drop, but not so slow that it's uncomfortable.
Unless you want to train the eccentric part of the lift, which I think Evan Centopani does that. He basically pulls the deadlift weight off a rack and then just goes slow down this way. So you can train the deadlift that way instead of pulling up if you want. But yeah, in general, don't pick it up and drop it. Okay, are powerlifting shoes worth it?
Which shoes?
What's a
If you're talking about lifters
to
to squat in, then I definitely say yes. Especially if you're training the 3 lifts consistently and squatting consistently, if you're front squatting, lifters make a big difference. I use them all the time in strongman. If you're benching to where you have to keep your heel on the ground, then it gives you a little bit more height on your heel. And it just puts you in a better position for the squat. I wouldn't depend on them, and some people don't like them. So again, it's just all personal preference, but it's definitely worth trying.
Yeah, I wouldn't wear them for deadlifts, however.
No.
Question from YouTube. Crystal says she has quite tight hips. What do you recommend for exercises to improve tight hips?
The mobilities?
Mobilities.
Yoga.
Man, yoga. There's lots of great stretches. Couch stretch is a great one for your hips. If you can find a thing
Foam roll?
like this here. Try to stand up is, I'm pretty flexible in my hips. A lot of people, this is going to kill a lot of people, but being able to have your hip flexor straight.
Something that's extremely important that we didn't mention is warming up before you even pick up the bar. So I go through like 10 minutes of warm up, no matter what, whether I'm squatting, benching. I go through a dynamic warm up every time, which I foam roll, I do hip opening exercises and exercises to fire up my glutes. I use something like this band and I'll put it around my legs and then I'll engage my hips by warming up this way and taking big steps forward, big steps back while I'm squatted and my glutes are engaged. And then I'll do stuff like I'll swing my legs and warm up my hamstrings, like I'll walk and I'll stretch my hamstrings before I train. Not an overstretch, but a dynamic warm-up is where you're getting a lot of blood flow going and getting those muscles fired. A lot of people just walk into the gym and they start squatting. And I think that's again where or deadlifting or benching, that's where a lot of injuries come from because you're just not even warmed up. There's a lot of great stretching and warm-up videos on Bodybuilding.com. And just make it a routine every day. And then if the days that you're not training aren't an excuse to not do anything, use those days for mobility and stretching work, whether you're going to yoga or even swimming and just working on your weaknesses, like if you have tight hips.
Yeah. Another question, should I keep my back straight or roll while deadlifting? Not sure.
Roll like that.
Yeah.
Straight.
So, yeah, keep your back straight. Here's the thing. There's a graph in your mind, if you can think about it, where like your risk of injury and your skill or purpose or goal are gonna sort of be the same way. So if you are trying to be a world champ powerlifter, if you're a pro strong woman, you gotta have a little bit more risk of injury because you're training at such a high level that it's gonna happen. So that being said, if you're lifting heavy AF, your back is probably going to round. It's impossible to look at the best lifters, the best deadlifters in the world and be like, dude, their back's rounding, why can't mine? Like Mark Bell. You're not Mark Bell, you are you. So unless you like know precisely what you're doing and are on a big stage, there's really no reason for you to put your back in an improper or scary position just for the sake of putting weight up. So your upper back can round, that's probably fine as long as your lower back stays. If you're pulling and your upper back gets a little rounded, that's okay.
Your back is naturally going to round from the weight just pulling on your traps.
Yes.
To keep it completely flat back is not going to be possible.
Right.
And you've got to overload to build strength.
Yes.
So you're going to have some rounding in your back as you're training.
But if it starts to look like this, or your lower back, this hurts you being in this position. If this is what you look like if you're deadlifting, like stop. Another thing I would suggest is to like film yourself or have your like take fewer selfies and take more videos of your lifts. Post those on the internet, that's fine. But like have someone shoot you doing a lift and then watch it and learn. Put your video up next to like a legit lifter and watch.
And then you'll see where your body's breaking down and you'll find out more so where your weaknesses are.
Yep.
So Gamer Till Death on Twitch wants to know if we can get a flex.
Flex, she's more impressive. Somebody wants us to show the lift from the side. So we're gonna do the hex bar from the side. That's a good call, sorry. How we doing on time, Derek?
Very good.
Wrap it up, okay. Can you see, is that better?
Yep.
Okay, so we're just gonna do the hex bar from the side. Okay, so shoulders are above her hips, but her hips are above her knees. Her back's nice and flat, her head's neutral, and her neck's neutral. And she's going to push her hips, push down on the floor, and push her hips up. You'll also notice a thing that Rachel does, which is, I think, really smart and clear sign that she is a good lifter, is that she actually sort of has a little movement to her body before she deadlifts. So if you notice, she'll put the weight down, she'll bring her hips up, and then she'll pull. A lot of people have this issue where they just sort of like sit in the starting position for a long time.
Which is, for me, it's like a mental cue to load my hamstrings. You'll see a lot of powerlifters, like some of them, they'll pump their legs multiple times, and it's a lot of times just a mental thing more than it is anything else. Some powerlifters will roll the bar towards their shins. Just powerlifting gets really technical. So just try to keep it basic for yourself, but if there's little cues that help you to remember to keep your back tight, to keep your butt low, to load your hamstrings and pull and push through your heels, then do those things and just make it a habit. Stepping out with the squat every time you squat, just make everything a habit so that it just becomes very comfortable.
Yeah. A lot of times if you just sit in the starting position, all that tension goes out of all the muscles that need to be ready to fire. So you don't necessarily have to roll or do what Rachel does, but like she said, move, do something.
Yeah,
have a cue for yourself.
A mental cue for myself.
Yes. Okay, do leg curl and deadlift have the same impact on your hamstrings? No, they don't.
Leg curl would be a good accessory afterwards.
Yeah.
So it's not a bad thing to do, but they would be one and the same.
Yeah.
Do them
Again, it's hard to. The power lifts they are useful to bodybuilding, but the power lifts are truly a sport. Same with weightlifting, same with snatch and clean and jerk. Those are sport lifts. And to throw them into your program willy-nilly, if you're a bodybuilder, is sort of like unwise to me. If your true purpose is to get your hamstrings bigger, this will work. But there might be better ways. Especially because, another thing with the power lifts, you have to truly do enough weight, and if you can't do them properly and do enough weight, it's not going to really have any impact on your musculature.
And if your focus is on your hamstrings, it might be more appropriate to do straight leg deadlifts or RDLs to where that's more the focus of the lift.
Right. Thanks, Kels. She said #goals. Okay, locking your knees at the top, keep them soft.
I don't really think about it. I wouldn't over-exaggerate it to where you're locking them out so much that you're going into overextension. But if your knees aren't locked out enough to where you show that you're in control of the weight, you want to get in the habit of standing up and locking your hips and your legs out so that if you ever did do powerlifting or anything where you would need to have more of that structure, then it's more natural for you. If you're going fast again through your reps, your form is going to break down, and part of that could be that you're not locking out your hip or your knees. But if it helps you to keep to stay tight and not come up and lock out all the way, and you have a habit of going into that overextension, then maybe just come up and keep your knees soft and go back down.
Yeah, I'd say work on flexing your glutes, not necessarily like straightening your legs. And then a lot of the times, if your legs are locked out, it's gonna be weird. Like I feel like the weight's gonna just hang right.
It's gonna be more natural if you think about firing your hips and squeezing your glutes. That your legs are gonna naturally lock out because you need them to push through to lock the weight out.
Yep.
So your knees are gonna naturally be more extended.
I don't know where your question was.
How about
Harris, yo, dead serious, I need to know. I don't know what your question was. So if you re-ask it, I'll try to answer it. Sorry.
Let's start to wrap it up, and let's do like a speed round of quick answers.
Okay.
So
hold on, one more question.
after this one.
Oh. Demonstrate a straight leg deadlift using the hex bar. I wouldn't do a straight leg
bar.
deadlift using a hex bar.
Just
That's
use
like impossible.
dumbbells.
Yeah.
Either use dumbbells or use a regular straight bar.
Yeah. If you're gonna just you gotta bend your legs in this. I don't know how you would keep that's not some serious mobility. Yeah, just use a straight bar if you do a straight leg deadlift or stiff leg deadlift. Okay, we're gonna wrap it up, and to do so,
We'll do a speed round.
we're gonna do a speed round of rapid fire questions that we have to answer in like 1 or 2 words. Could be anything, except for inappropriate weird stuff.
So not anything.
What?
So the maybe, probably.
Also, if you want to follow us on the Instagrams,
I post most of my training video. My name is Rachel Pyron. That's the easiest way to find me. Or search strong woman stuff. I'll probably
is it
pop up
Rachel
somewhere.
Pyron?
Just Rachel Pyron.
I'm Cassie.a.smith. I have lots of baby pictures on mine. It's like baby and like some training. I'm less cool.
I mostly have
What was
published.
yours?
Cassie.a.smith. Okay, rapid fire questions. Go. I can't wait to hear them. Okay, go.
How much do you bench?
How much do you bench? I'm embarrassed.
I've hit 180 before, but I don't bench consistently as a powerlift because in strongman my focus is overhead. So bench for me is more of an accessory, or incline bench. I don't do typical benching as a main lift until my off season, which I don't get it.
I'm the same way with CrossFit and lifting a bench. My bench is like 155 on a really good day, but I can jerk 225. So
That's more.
it's just yeah. But thanks, good making us feel bad. What do you bench, bro? My left hand is stronger than my right. How to fix this? Do farmer's carries.
Yeah, isolate
From bars.
using that hand more and don't depend on straps. You can also do stuff like there's old school things where people used to fill up buckets of sand and you work your grip through into the bucket of sand and grip the sand, so you can do stuff like that. Search old school stuff for grip strength because grip is huge.
Yeah,
like there's
it's hard
specific
to do, yeah.
lifting and competitions focused on grip, so there's a lot out there.
Yep. How much do you weigh?
And how tall are you guys too? I got that quite a bit.
I'm 4'11", and I typically weigh around 126 pounds.
I'm 5'6" and I weigh about 145.
Do you guys like rack pulls?
Yes.
That's a great
Yeah, a
exercise.
lot of times in strongman I pull with an axle and I pull off of racks or tires to keep the weight higher, so I pull many different heights of the lift.
Yeah.
What's your favorite movie?
Tombstone.
That's a great movie. I'm your Huckleberry. I'm partial to Princess Bride. So cute. It's just a great love story. If you watch that, it's awesome. I'm sure you will. Have you ever seen it?
Do you bicep? What's your favorite curl? Bicep curl? Leg curl?
Oh.
Well, I do a lot of hammer curls because of the log lift,
Oh.
but curls, I usually do curls after like a deadlift day or a back day, and then triceps after pressing.
I don't do them.
What's a random fact about yourself?
I've eaten guinea pig.
Oh my god. Can't match that. I don't even know. I ran a marathon, and that's why I started lifting.
Because I hate my feet. Seriously. Liquid chalk or wrist straps? Chalk.
Chalk first, and then use straps
Then
if you have to.
What supplements do you take?
Pre-workout, I like the Evogenic string, pre-caged. I take, I use protein when I'm not getting in enough meals, especially. A carb during training. If you're training these power lifts, it's good to have nutrients as you're training because it'll just keep your energy up. So multivitamin, of course, fish oil, basics, and then a lot of it will depend on what your training is specifically.
Yes. For me, I'm not a supplement girl. I take protein. I like plant-based protein. Whey kind of makes my tummy feel yucky. TMI, maybe. And creatine.
Do you drink
5 grams. Aminos every once in a while. I mostly use aminos to flavor my water plus caffeine.
Electrolytes are huge in strength training, I think, and when you're doing a lot of conditioning.
Yeah.
A lot of bodybuilders and people drink a ton of water, and they're just flushing out a lot of those electrolytes. So try to think about that as well, which could be impacting your performance.
Yes. Who motivates you? That's a great question. Rachel.
Cassie. Cassie's badass. If I could ever learn how to clean a jerk like her,
You can't.
it'd just be just.
If I could deadlift like Rachel, or do a stone like Rachel, or a log, or an axe, just don't drop it on.
Don't drop it on your foot.
Is rice gives us fat?
No.
Does rice make you fat? No, it sure doesn't.
Too much rice, too much of anything.
Too much of anything, exactly. How often do you eat? That's a great question.
I eat a lot. I like to eat every 2 or 3 hours, but that's just because I feel better when I do. Some people do intermittent fasting or they don't need to eat that often. Again, personal preference, but I eat every 2 to 3 hours.
I eat every 3 to 4. I eat probably less than Rachel because I'm less good at my respective sport.
I don't eat enough, probably. I don't think, I could always do better with my eating. It's definitely a full-time job to almost keep track of your nutrients and eating enough and prepping food.
Yep. I'm really bad at meal
sucks.
prepping. Not my bag.
Anyone want to prep meals for us? I'll hire you. As long as it's good.
Okay, that's enough for today. Thanks for hanging out with us. Again, Rachel and Cassie, see you guys in a couple weeks when we do. Find me on, we are on Instagram. Instagram.
Rachel Pyron, just search Instagram. It's pretty simple.
Pyron.
Yep, on the YouTube as well.
Yes. Cassie.a.smith. And let us know also in the comments what you guys want us to tutorialize the next time we do it. If you want to know about nutrition, if you want to know about core training, if you want to know about strongman, we can do that. We can do more CrossFit or weightlifting.
I can't teach CrossFit. You can teach me.
We can make Rachel cry. Okay, see you guys later.
Stones next time.